and I go about my business in mine. Why is that so hard to do? Why is it that we are determined to rip our own neighborhoods, our own people, our own communities, where we're determined to rip them to shreds, and then get mad if somebody else don't respect us? But where's your self-respect? Where is your pride? Like, you have to start somewhere. And I'm not saying it's all on us, because a lot of this was put on us. But at some point, you do have to take responsibility for the fact that you're keeping it going. Because there's a lot of things that we cannot change, and we're working on it. But there are a lot of things we can change, and we should. Because if we started changing the way we interacted with each other, and then move forward as a united front that is determined to get the best education for our children, that's determined to have the best food for our families, that's determined to have good jobs and the best education, that's determined to have beautiful neighborhoods, that's determined to have businesses that are thriving. If we move forward in that manner, everything else will start to fall into place, because they wouldn't know what to do with you. But instead, we opt to be the stereotype. And we're one of the few that do that. I don't see too many other people do that. But we are determined to be the stereotype. That has to stop. And this ripping each other to shreds for kicks, it's funny to other people. We find it sad and disheartening. But it actually puts the label that was put on us, that just proves to everybody else outside the community that it's not a stereotype. It is very true. Because we're doing the very things that they said we would do. We're going for each other's throats over something that was really, really nobody else's business. Like, her coming out as a lesbian changed your day how? What did that revelation do to mess up your morning? Did it cause you to lose your job? Did your husband leave you because Angela Davis is a lesbian? Your kids stop liking you? Dinner don't taste just right? Mashed potatoes ain't quite mashed? Like, what did it change for you? We have to do better. And I always say we instead of you, because there are things that I can do. There are things that people around me can do. We have to do better. Whether you like her or not, she's an icon in this community. Other people are already trashing her. She doesn't need us to do it too. And now I'm going to move on to my next topic. The actual topic of the day. And today's topic is, it's for everybody, but it's going to be more so directed at women. And that is this. And I saw somebody mention this yesterday, I want to say. Stop competing with his ex. And in the case of my fellas, for the few that do, because they don't do, it's not as common for men to do this as it is for women. Stop competing with her ex. Now let me explain to you what I mean. There are some people out there, out and about, dating, doing their things, living their lives, and they get into relationships with somebody that they feel is the one, or they hope is the one, because then they got tired of dating and bouncing around. And then they find out that the man that they're dating still has a bit of, and I won't necessarily call it a connection, but there was something special between him and somebody before you. So you feel as though you have to make that person before you look bad, and in the process try to do everything she did but do it 10 times better. And all you do when you do that is drive yourself crazy. Because you will never live up to his ex. And if you are in a situation where he's trying to force you to live up to his ex, then you need to be single. Because that's not the relationship for you. Fellas, it's the same thing. If you're in a relationship with a woman who's constantly bringing up, well, you know what my ex used to do, tell her to go find him. Because that's not the situation for you. And now I'm going to take it further because you know I like to give you stories from my own life. So here we go. And this person was actually supposed to be on with me today. They will be on a future podcast to talk about this situation, but they were sick. But I'm going to give you two stories actually. I have an ex-husband and I have an ex-boyfriend who both did this. So with the ex-husband, we had been separated for we divorced years ago, like years and years ago. But between that and our separation, we have not seen each other in 16, 17 years. And when we reconnected and worked out the whole situation, not worked out like we got back together because I'm in another relationship, but like just got to a place where we could actually speak to each other and figured out what happened. Because we just went our separate ways. Things started getting bad. I knew something was off. I pretty much knew what it was, but he didn't know that I knew what it was. And he was too scared to tell me, so he started acting out of guilt. And I just quit speaking to him. Like, we legit lived in the same house and I didn't speak to him for 2 years. So when I tell people, I know the places where I have to work on myself because I can hold a grudge like it's nobody's business. Imagine walking around the house with somebody that you call your spouse and they don't part their lips to say boo to you for, it was almost 2 years. I mean, not hi, bye, drop dead, move out of my way. None of that. I have nothing to say to you until you tell me what you need to tell me. And I know you have something to tell me. You refuse to tell me. I'm not speaking. And I didn't. And we ended up separating behind that. So when we reconnected, he actually told me what it was that happened. Now, mind you, after he told me what happened, we would have still separated, but we would have separated cordially. We would have had a conversation about it. It would have been, you know, I need to be on my own. You need to be on your own. We need to figure some things out. Maybe we can come back together. But because you decided to hide things from me, I ain't speaking to you. So by the time we reconnected, he told me that during that time frame, he had ended up dating somebody he had known when he was a teenager and dated for something like 10 years during that time that we hadn't spoken to each other. And he said she would complain. And if you've ever heard any of my older, like the original, when I first started doing podcasting, most of those are deleted, then you've heard this story from him, where he said that during, when he would sleep, he didn't realize this until she complained one day, in his sleep, he would talk to me. And one day she heard him call me by name and she flipped out. But she then made it her mission that anything that she ever heard him say, or he may say something in passing that made him think of me, anything that she, right down to things that I like to wear or perfume, anything, she would try to mimic it and do it better. And then would periodically, well, I mean, I could do that. I could probably do better than she could. And that's what I mean by don't do that. If he's still hooked on his ex, then you need to be hooked on somebody else. Get hooked on yourself. But you need not be there. But if it is a situation such as I have an ex-boyfriend who got married. Now, he flat out said, there were witnesses there and everything, he wasn't trying to hide it, that I was the blueprint by which every woman after me would have to follow. His words. But when he got into the relationship with the woman that he ultimately settled down with and married, there were a couple of different thoughts behind it. His father thinks that he only did it because I wouldn't go back to him. So he settled down with the person he was with It was one of those, if you can't be with the one you love, love the one you're with type foolishness. Um, and my issue with it was she knew this, but she was determined to win. She was determined to beat me. I don't know what game we were playing because I didn't want any parts of him. But she was determined that ultimately she was going to be so much better than me that he would forget about me. And now in their case, I will say this, it didn't start off this way, but he ended up doing a very respectful thing. Me and him do not speak to each other at all. Now, it was partially because I quit speaking to him, but he used to just still try to reach out to me, and he stopped trying to have any contact with me at all. And like I said, I'm cool with his father. His father was like, he's only doing that because he feels like if he sees you, that it'll bring all those feelings back. And his father explained something to me, and I thought it was interesting. He was like, you do realize you can have more than one soulmate in your lifetime. He was like, and he honestly feels like you were his. But when that got messed up and you refused to come back or refused to talk to him, he was like, he knew he had to move on. When you have a soul tie to somebody like that, you don't move on without a part of it going with you. Like, a part of that person is going to always be with you because of how close you are. Now, that doesn't mean that both parties are tied to each other. I could care less. I quit speaking to people for a reason. But it doesn't mean that I wasn't affected by that relationship, because I was. It also doesn't mean that just because I don't ever want to go back and I don't care anymore, that he's going to feel the same way that I do. We're not the same person. Just because I don't want any parts of him doesn't mean that he didn't want a part of me. But, and see, in this case, it worked out. Because he was like, I have to shut that down. And he told his father. And his father was like, yeah, he even told him he had to shut anything down that had to do with me so that he could focus on his wife without there being any type of distraction in his mind. Because he knew if he saw me, it would be a problem. At least he was willing to say that this is a situation. I want to do this for my wife, but I know that I can't see my ex. Cool. That's wonderful. I personally wouldn't have even stayed with the situation that long to find out if he was going to do that, because there were some real disrespectful times in there I would later on find out. Because at the time that he was dating the woman, he told me that him and the woman were friends and they were not dating. He had no intentions on ever dating the woman. I did not realize that he was lying to me because he didn't want me to know he was in a relationship. I wouldn't even find out until one of my children told me that he was actually dating this woman and that she had no clue that he was still trying to get me to move closer to him. Which is when I was like, okay, I don't want you speaking to me at all. He used to call me to get to the kids. Nope, they got cell phones. Call them. Don't talk to me. So I want no parts of whatever it is you got going on, because I know you. You about to do something real stupid. But the fact that she stuck with it, that's on her. But it worked out in the end for her. That is not always the case. That is rarely ever the case. And to be quite honest, if at some point he crossed my path, it would be a whole can of worms open, kicked over, and spilled. Stop putting yourself in a position to play second string. You're trying to compete with a woman who, in most cases, does not know you. In most cases, does not care about you or him. I have no clue who you are, and I do not care about him. But you feel the need to be in competition. Somewhere in your mind, we are in competition. You're not in competition with me, sweetheart. You're in competition with his memory of me. And instead of competing with his memory, you need to tell him that he needs to make a decision. He needs to make a decision now, or you're going to make a decision and be about. Now, if you're really that important to him, then he'll get it together. But we also have to stop having these expectations that because you step into a person's life, every person they dated before you all of a sudden goes flying out their mind. They don't remember them.